Welcome to the Capitol Rundown, where we bring you politics that matter to you from both sides of the aisle. For the Republicans, we have Themis Klarides, former House leader, and Jimmy Tickey for the Democrats, a Democratic strategist. Thank you so much for being with us.
Our pleasure.
So we, of course, the big news we've been talking about for the last couple hours here is the storm. We're not going to get into the politics of the storm because that's a bipartisan thing. We all got to stay home, right? The governor has told people to stay home.
Stay home.
Exactly. So we're all going to listen to him. But the one thing that was, I think is going to be interesting for people to hear is you might not realize it, but there are a lot of illicit drugs at your gas station. And this is affecting parents also because they shouldn't be selling pot at the gas station or things that look like candy that are laced with THC. But this is happening, right? And it's becoming a big issue. Themis, let's start with you.
It is, and it has been a big issue. I mean, I was in the legislature when every year the making marijuana legal bill came up, and I was one of the people that didn't support it because I knew that there were a lot of unintended consequences, and consequences, quite frankly, that we actually knew about. But right now, the Attorney General has been pushing very hard and is putting legislation in, as our other legislators, about the fact that you can sell marijuana in Connecticut if you have a dispensary license. So you need a state license, as you need for many other things. But there are many vape shops and convenience stores and gas stations that are selling these products, and they're illegal, number one. So they're trying to really crack down on that, but they're also packaging a lot of these in bright colors that look like candy that kids will go and buy. Now, why a kid is in a vape shop, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that they're getting them somehow. That last year, I think there was something like 100 pounds of it that ended up, in kids' hands. I mean, it's just dangerous. It's not. It's a huge public health issue. And I know the Attorney General has put in a couple recommendations, like a statewide certification. And what they're already doing is, if a police department goes into a vape shop, let's just say, or a convenience store, gas station in their town, and they confiscate things because they're selling illegally, the town can keep the money now. You know, it used to be that the state took some of the money and the town some of the money, but these are ways that you can incent people to get this stuff done. Because right now, nobody's afraid of anything. But when you're afraid, you're going to lose your business, you're going to get arrested, you're going to do these things, and you see one of your colleagues that happens to, that they're actually, we as a state are enforcing it and the towns are enforcing it. That's when people change their behavior.
Yeah. And Jimmy, this is a bipartisan issue where I know the Attorney General, who is a Democrat, has been on Great Day Connecticut and others warning parents that when you see these Sour Patch Kids that are laced with cannabis, there's no such thing as a legal product that should ever look like that here in Connecticut. Right.
No, absolutely. It sounds to me like it is bipartisan. This is something that really needs to be addressed and cracked down on. You know, nationally, there could be laws around how these things are marketed. We all might remember how cigarettes used to be marketed with fun cartoon characters and all the rest. We cannot be marketing this like candy to youngsters. And then in states are really stepping up to take a look at the marketing of this, the availability of this, and really these proliferation of different smoke shops. And not every smoke shop is doing this, but often towns are finding that some smoke shops that are appearing on every corner are selling items that they really should not be selling and making them available to youngsters.
It's easy for the teens to get them if they want.
Right.
And the whole idea was that you would be going into a dispensary once it was legal, and you wouldn't be able, you'd have to be 21, and so that's not really playing out.
Right, and so a lot of towns are also stepping up to the plate and saying, you know what, we are going to take a look at our regulations around smoke shops, just as they do around other types of businesses in town, like liquor stores and so forth. So to take a look and say, how many smoke shops do we want in a particular area? Is there a maximum amount? And what are the regulations locally around having a smoke shop?
One of the arguments to legalize marijuana was, well, there were many, but part of it was also to bring in money for the state, and that they wanted to decriminalize so that people wouldn't end up behind bars for small amounts of marijuana. We all understand that. But the other part was some financial piece. And we recently did a story that people are going across the border a lot to Massachusetts because it's cheaper there than it is here in Connecticut. But I'd like to hear what both of you have to say as far as, now that marijuana has been legalized to some extent, is the state making a lot of money? Is it helping in some way?
Well, let's remember, those are two kind of different arguments and two discussions. Decriminalizing marijuana was done already in the state before we made recreational marijuana legal.
Okay.
So that they're two separate things.
Two separate things.
I haven't really been able to find out why it's cheaper in Massachusetts, but it is cheaper in Massachusetts, and whole argument, which I found interesting because I was leader, I was in the legislature at the time, and I heard from most of my Democrat colleagues, well, we're losing all this tax revenue to Massachusetts and other states. I said, you cannot make a major public health policy change in a state because we're going to get more money in. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. Let's make cuts in other places. Let's tighten up government. Let's do different things. But when you make policy decisions based on how much money we're going to bring in, public health policy. Because remember, when government makes a decision, they decide, okay, such and such is legal. Your average person is going to say, okay, then it's not unhealthy for me. There's nothing wrong if I do it. It's fine. But this regulation that's going on now, that's really not being followed. If you want, I mean, it's bad enough that it's legal, in my opinion. I know everybody has different opinions on that. But it's basically unregulated to a certain extent because people are selling it everywhere they go. We are getting tax revenue for it. The tax revenue is getting lower than it was before because before we had medical marijuana legal first. Mm-hmm. And then recreational marijuana became legal. So once that happened, remember, we don't get any tax money from the medical marijuana. Mm-hmm. We don't get any tax dollars from that. So that started to lessen, and more people went and bought recreational marijuana because it was easier to get. You didn't need the medical card and all that. So, it's a pretty convoluted explanation, but the fact of the matter is that, yes, we're getting tax dollars, but they're less than people anticipated, and we now have these huge public health issues.
Jimmy, you were for legalizing marijuana.
So, yeah, I did not have a vote, of course, in the legislature, but I was, and it did ultimately pass. And it wasn't passed because of the money that the state would get, but it was passed based on the debate that was had at the time and passing the recreational use of marijuana. Interestingly, even President Trump recently came out and I think is looking to deschedule, the schedule of marijuana as well. So this really has been a conversation for many, many years federally and in states, and as states that have approved it, that people have had trouble getting financing and banking as they start businesses because of some of the federal laws. So I think everyone is trying to figure this out. But when Connecticut did that, yes, there is monies that come back to the state and monies that also go to the locality, because there was a conversation around the state, the money that is being made on the sales of marijuana can come back actually and help maybe the localities do some drug education to youngsters or some anti-drug education. So we're seeing that come back to the towns. Maybe in Massachusetts it is cheaper to get, but that also just might be the market figuring itself out. It's still relatively new in Connecticut, whereas in Connecticut and some other states it has been available for a while. So I think the market is figuring itself out, and as that is happening and people can get marijuana, there still needs to be that crackdown on the smoke shops and where it is really being sold illegally. That needs to be addressed. Can I just
quickly comment about the hypocrisy of that entire statement, that we're making marijuana legal, but then we want to give more money to the towns to do drug education programs to talk about why it's not good for you, why it's not safe. I mean, the hypocrisy of the whole thing is still beyond my comprehension. I'm sorry. I still
but it's when one are drinking alcohol, to have good alcohol information. When someone is smoking cigarettes, to have information around cigarettes. So giving people especially youngsters that are learning all this for the first time, to give them the education and the information as they make decisions for themselves.
Which is a big problem, and we're going to move on from there because I want to make sure we have time to get to the rest. But affordability, big issue across the country, where lots of people are running on this. But Governor Lamont, who's also running again for governor, is saying he'll put a cap on out-of-state landlords. And this is something we've been covering, where especially in southeastern Connecticut, down in the New London, Norwich area, there have been hedge funds buying up apartments, and tenants are unionizing because the rents aren't just going up a little bit. It's extreme, right, Jimmy?
Right, that's right. And this really, it's not okay. You have out-of-state folks, and this is not grandma and grandpa that own an investment property and live in Connecticut. These are out-of-state businesses, often hedge funds, huge financial companies that are buying up one apartment, an apartment building, blocks of houses. We're seeing this across the country, and that's not okay. Someone that doesn't even live here in Connecticut is off at some other far-off location, buying these as assets and then increasing the rent, which really hurts our Connecticut residents. And so when we're having this discussion about housing and how can we address the supply of housing, but also address the cost of housing, this is one way that the governor is actually proposing legislation as we approach this legislative session to say, let's take a look at how fast rent could increase for a building or an apartment that is owned owned by an out-of-state business, and really look if we could crack down on those rents that are just increasing. Maybe improvements aren't even being made to substantiate why you would have such an increase, and that really hurts people. And so we shouldn't see these huge increases in your rent month to month, especially when that landlord doesn't even care about Connecticut.
Themis?
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, it's our job as government to make sure people are protected and they're not being taken advantage of. But the problem with this proposal, from what I've seen, is that it is probably unconstitutional. I mean, there's an equal protection clause in the 14th Amendment that says similarly situated people need to be treated similarly. So to say that out-of-state landlords will be treated differently with a rent cap in this circumstance versus in-state. Now, if people are being treated, if they're slumlords. I mean, we already have laws on the books, slumlords, people that aren't being treated properly, and I agree. I agree we should do something about it, but we should do something about it across the board. We should make sure that everybody is treated the same way, because if the renters are the people that are the victims in this circumstance, which I certainly believe they are, according to the stories you hear, then we need to make sure we change our laws to make sure those people are protected across the board.
We'll keep reporting on that. I also want to bring up that we are possibly facing another government shutdown as far as the date. I mean, we were reporting on that forever, and now we're coming up to that date again. There does not seem to be an appetite for a shutdown this time. Is that correct? But we are talking about some controversy over funding more money to give ICE for arresting people.
Right. I do not think we'll see a government shutdown. I agree, and I think many do agree. We're just coming off of a shutdown of 43 days. And so what has been happening this week is that in Congress, switching to our federal government, they have been passing very large spending bills to keep a government humming. But one of the disagreements that has been happening throughout this week is that this federal administration has actually proposed a significant increase in the funding of ICE. And our Democratic members of Congress in Connecticut and most Democrats around the country did not support that. We want to see more accountability. We do not need the chaos and the confusion and the harm that ICE is causing in so many communities. And so Democrats did not support the increased funding of ICE. We do not need ICE in the streets. We do not welcome ICE here in Connecticut. We trust our local and state police. And so while Democrats are on board with funding government to keep it open, there was a major disagreement about the continuation of what Secretary Noem and this president are doing with ICE, really weaponizing federal agencies against the American people.
And Themis, what's your take on well, not only the government shutdown, but definitely people have some different opinions on these ICE enforcements and what they want happening to immigrants or illegal immigrants?
Certainly. It's interesting that the vote in the House was 220 to 207, which means a bunch of Democrats actually did vote for the bill. Because the problem with these kind of bills that are funding bills, right? It's not just the money that went to ICE. There's money that went to housing. There's money that went to transportation. The Obamacare funding. There's money that went to a lot of things that other people, if they didn't support the ICE money, they supported the other money. And that's why a lot of, it wasn't a close vote, considering how close the Republicans and the Democrat numbers are in the House. What I know that the Democrats took from that is they considered it a win because they got money for de-escalation training, and they got money for body cams. But interesting, so what we saw happen in Minnesota, there really wasn't a lack of a body cam, and we all saw what happened. But I understand it. I do believe that ICE agents need to be trained more. I don't think they're trained enough, and I think they need to be trained more and educated more. And de-escalation is important whether you're a state police, local police, ICE agent, whatever you are. So, I don't think we have an appetite for another shutdown at this point. Stay tuned for the next time around. But right now, I think we agree on the fact that we're going to move forward and things will continue through January 31st. But that's what happens when you have these big, huge bills. There's a lot of stuff in them, and you can say, "I don't support." You said the Democrats didn't support that. Well, they voted for it. A lot of them did. So
a lot of ICE protests, and we'll see what happens with the freezing cold weather and snow. But people have been still showing up. Last thing, and we're going to have to end Capitol Rundown on the idea of as we are getting a big snowstorm. A lot of questions about will school be canceled on Monday. Our weathermen are saying that is not out of the realm. They probably will have no school on Monday. I know that Mayor Mamdani has come out and said that he wants the kids to be online. We don't need snow days. New York City kids should be online. what's your take on snow days, and where are we with that? Is there a political appetite to take away snow days?
Well, listen, not on my end, I will say that. I mean, I think there's a value to kids. You know, it's snowing out. You're going to have the day off. You're going to go out and play in the snow with your friends and your siblings and doing things instead of sitting in front of a computer or on a game and that kind of thing. I mean, I think it's valuable. We're not talking about 20 snow days in a school year, at least not nowadays. So I'm all for snow days.
Yes.
Okay. If only kids could vote. Yes,
Yes, give them the snow day. Go sledding or make some good food at home and hang out, be with your family, and go out and have fun and just enjoy the snow day. Enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Those are the memories that we all think, you know,
Yes.
you stay out till you're
We need that.
freezing. I don't even like the cold, but you go out and sled and do all that. So we'll have everything you need to know with the forecast coming up. But as of right now, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Just plan that you're probably not going to school on Monday. Get those sleds ready.
You know,
All
are
right.
we taking bets over how many inches we're getting?
What's your take?
I'll say 16.
Oh, wow. I'll say 14.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go with our meteorologists who say 12 to 18. But
You can't have a range.
okay, a range? Okay, I'm going to say, what did you said 16?
I said 16, you said 14.
Okay. So I'm going to say 17, so that
Okay.
I'll be on the most end. There is one model that was showing 20 inches for Hartford,
Oh, my goodness.
so just one.
Never know.
Have
see.
fun. Stay safe.
Stay safe. And we have more streaming. Our exclusive sports show is coming up here on WFSB Plus. We'll be back for Great Day Connecticut at 3 and Eyewitness News at 4 as we break down the storm for you. Have a great day, everyone.